Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi and welcome back to That Trippi Show. This week, when we release this episode, there are just 80 days until Election Day. Kamala momentum continues. I do want to say thank you to everyone who shared and liked our Embrace the Joy episode last week, Reject the Hate, because there's a ton of both of those things out there. And now we have to harness the joy part and the momentum and go win this thing. Also this week, we're getting to the point where the polls are starting to matter. They matter a lot more post-Labor Day, but you're starting to see some clear trends, and we'll get into them on today's show. So, Alex, where should we get started?
Well, I'm going to throw you off right away and ask you about that. You say after Labor Day, that's pretty common. Most people who've been in any kind of campaign understand that really everything kicks up after Labor Day. But why is that, Joe? Because
it's literally when everybody starts to pay attention. I mean, but 6 months ago, very few people. We were pretty, active partisans were. And it gets, as we get closer, more people start to pay attention. And you can't really get someone's accurate perception of how they're going to vote in a poll, when they're not really paying any attention. And many of them may not even answer, the phone with a poll because or as soon as they hear it's a poll call, they hang up. All those things are pollsters got to figure that out. But there's just a lot of reasons why until you get to Labor Day, you can't really start, paying too much attention. However, look, whenever there's a big moment, a convention, for instance, there's usually a balance. There's things that happen that sort of start to set the to sort of set the trend line. And, clearly Biden passing the torch to Kamala Harris, her pick of Governor Walz is, that we've seen in the last 3 weeks. Yeah, those are big moments. And, they've created a clear trend that, matters. Now, can it sustain? These are some of the questions. People ask me like, geez, with this momentum, can she sustain it? I don't think it's so much sustaining it. It's harnessing it because you have these thousands of volunteers coming in, all this energy, all this excitement, harness that energy and do the work. And I think we're starting to see some trends. I know you want to get into them.
Well, and before we get into the trends, so in 2017, we were on the ground for months in Alabama. And I bring that up because the joy that the community of volunteers, and one of the many, many reasons Doug Jones made history was there was this very, very dedicated, fired up community of almost entirely older African-American women who were going around to college campuses, getting out the vote everywhere they could. And if you spent like 10 minutes with them, 10 seconds with them, you understood that they were so, I think Barack Obama used to say, putting the community back in community organizing. But that momentum and that power of running a campaign that is joyful is a very serious thing. And if that can be harnessed, then, buckle up.
Yeah, no, exactly. So you see the biggest poll that got my eye on this week is Cook. They surveyed 7 battleground states in early August. Yeah, the 7. In May, Trump was either tied or up several points on Biden in each of those states. Now it's completely different, wildly different. Harris is up by 4 in Arizona, and Trump was up by 4 there. It's an 8-point swing. Georgia, they're tied. In Michigan, Harris is up by 2. Pennsylvania Trump was up 3. It's now Harris up 5, another 8-point swing. Nevada, Trump is up there by 5, but that's still closing a little bit. Yeah. North Carolina, folks, this is a state Biden lost by only 74,000 votes. Harris is now up by 2. Trump was up by 8 in North Carolina. It's a 10-point swing. And in Wisconsin, Harris is up by 5. So you look under the hood, And Harris is making big gains with non-college white voters, AKA Trump's base.
Yeah, that is huge. This should maybe be like we might have wanted to lead with this. Everybody should be screaming about this.
Yeah, I mean, she's making big gains there. The New York Times poll had Trump plus 25 points with them in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Now it's Trump plus 14. So there's like a literally 11-point swing that could be the whole race. But, you know, again, it's not just that. You're seeing the base coming home. We thought it would, but it's coming home very quickly, and she's gaining there. You know, in another poll of young voters done by our friend John Della Volpe shows what's really going on under the hood. Young voters are much more enthusiastic now that Harris is the nominee. There has been a 13-point swing away from Trump and towards Harris. This may also explain why Biden was stuck and shows that Trump's lead was, like we have said, very soft because it was with Democratic-leaning groups. I mean, again, when Biden was at 70 with blacks and really under the gun with Latinos and young people, he was still in a virtual dead heat with Donald Trump. And we always on this show said, look, as we get closer to the election, those Democratic leaning base voters are going to come back to Biden. There was two things that would mean would happen, right? Biden would raise up into the higher 40s. And because most of the polls were showing Trump with like 18 points of black voters, if they did go home to Biden, well, it would mean Trump would be declining. He would lose some of those voters to Biden. Well, that's happening.
That's exactly what's happening.
It's exactly what's happening. We posited that it would happen with Biden. God knows whether it would or not, but that's what we believed would happen. You're seeing it happen overnight with Kamala Harris. And then on top of that, you're seeing, I think Walz is a big part of this too. They're connecting. This ticket's starting to connect with working folks, with non-college educated white voters. Some of it's actually starting to reach beyond those Democratic leaning groups that were in the swing vote or potentially in the swing vote, and now reaching beyond that. And and with Latinos, we mentioned the Somos poll last week. A new Equus poll shows more movement, where Biden was only +5 among Latinos in the 7 most critical states. Harris is now +19 after 2 weeks as the candidate. So this is what we were talking about. All these groups, young people, blacks, Latinos, that we thought we were looking at the double haters or the people that hadn't made up their minds. They were largely Democratic-leaning groups that we hoped or thought would move to Biden as the race got closer. It's clearly, I think this is a clear sign that some of that would have happened, but all of it's happening. And it's, like I said, moving further into non-college educated whites and other groups that if those start to erode even further on Trump, those are the trends you want to keep watching. It's still too early. Want to see if these hold up through Labor Day and post Labor Day, but that's my initial take on what we're seeing right now.
To follow up, though, and this is a question we got several times on social media, these swings just seem wild. Like every day there's a new poll headline, someone's moving somewhere. These swings are wild. Like, how do you interpret that? Are they really that wild?
No, they're not really wild at all. This is the electorate resetting and coming back, to where, again, these are fundamentally, a lot of these voters were part of the Democratic coalition that defeated Trump in 2020. The question was, we looked at it. Trump was always had the ceiling, and we said this many times, 45, 46, maybe could get to 47. And 53% of independents, the majority of Americans were telling pollsters that Trump was a grave threat to democracy. 53% of independents had decided they really did not want Trump to be president. And the question was with him at 46 or so and Biden at 46 or 45 around there and floating above him some days and behind other days, who would break? Could Biden get back a lot of those voters that made up that 53% that had made a big decision they didn't want Trump to be president, but couldn't bring themselves to vote for Biden? Again, a lot of those voters were the groups we're talking about: Blacks, Latinos, young people. And what the big threat of those voters was a RFK Jr. or a West or a Stein could attract them to vote for them instead of, them grudgingly voting for Biden, and Trump would win with 46, 47% of the vote, like he did in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. The problem with all that now is that's breaking. That group is breaking hard to Kamala, and, we're getting to the place here. And I think, by the way, the other thing is you're starting to see poll numbers where in some of these states and nationally where Trump is actually, at numbers like 44 and 43, which means that ceiling may even be declining again because of this ticket being more attractive to working people and non-college educated whites. When you look at those trends, it's, this isn't like just some, big swing, not explainable. This makes tremendous sense. We've been saying a lot of this for months. If the race is tied, when you're tied with young voters, who has room to grow? They would come to Democrats, and they have. That translates into a bigger lead for Kamala. Harris is clearly winning back some of the folks that Biden was having trouble with. But remember, Trump was never getting a lot of these people. I mean, they weren't there. They were just swinging back and forth, back to Biden or to undecided or the third party groups. They're now all moving to Kamala. And I think that is a shift that's very real. It was predictable. And in terms of with Biden, you may have had some hope plugged into that predictability. But that makes a hell of a lot more sense that's where a lot of them would have ended up. But many of them would have ended up with third parties. That's not happening. RFK Jr. is now like literally, skimming is near 1-2% in most of these polls. And the few that are voting for him are clearly in some of these polls look like they're coming out of Trump, not Biden.
Do not say that too loudly. Do not say that too loudly.
Yeah, I know. As someone we've been working on the third party thing from the get-go. Against Biden, it was clear that I think that he would have helped Trump. With Harris, it looks like he may be a thorn that can hurt Trump, but we'll see. We still, again, wait till Labor Day, post Labor Day. If he does become a threat, because in some of these states, you're still going to be a place like now Georgia or North Carolina again could be in play, and 15,000 votes in one of those states could make a difference. So Stein, West, and RFK Jr. We have to keep a watch on that and make sure that we do what's necessary to call attention to anyone where a vote for them is a vote that helps Trump. But right now, like I said, wait till Labor Day and we'll see.
Here's one more, Joe. And you've been beating the North Carolina drum for a while, but one I am looking at, because you called this out months ago, Florida is like kind of close right now. And I don't think that's a surprise to you.
No. I said back about Florida many times that if Biden could keep it close in Florida, that Debbie McChrystal-Powell would have a very good chance at getting past Rick Scott and winning that seat. And so you wake up today and, you have the new FAU Main Street poll shows it's a 2-point race. That's margin of error territory. And even the two-way without, and that's with RFK in it, but the two-way without RFK only has it a 3-point race. And so I think Florida, and our friend Rick Wilson from the Lincoln Project keeps screaming at us that, Florida is a sinkhole for Democratic dollars trying to in the fantasy that they will win it. I understand where he's coming from, and he may be right. And I'm not advocating, that Kamala Harris and the Walz campaign necessarily spend millions and millions of dollars trying to win Florida. I think North Carolina is a much better shot for their resources to win. But if this trend holds on, particularly with abortion being on the ballot, with the 6-week ban that DeSantis has passed, with Rick Scott's incredibly weak positions on, cutting Medicare and Social Security and having to carry the MAGA banner gleefully, I think Debbie Merkersel-Powell, who's running for the Senate against Scott, has a real shot now. And that's my pick for the surprise in November. If this trend continues. And I think small donors, those of us who have some, can chip in $10, $20 should consider Debbie Merkersel-Powell's campaign. I think she has a real shot. And I think Kamala Harris and Walz will keep it close there. But we'll see. It's still, like I said, wait till Labor Day. But if you can help her now, I would.
Another reason that this thing keeps moving, and including in Florida, I mean, as we're recording this week, we're getting more inflation numbers. The economy is really, really moving, like in a huge way.
Yeah, look, you just pointed out great inflation report. In July, annual inflation cooled to 2.9, the first time it's been below 3% since 2021. I think we're going to see this, I'm sure, in September. The Fed is going to lower interest rates. They fought the war on inflation, and it's being won. It will get to 2% at their target. And, jobs too. The quiet stat no one is talking about is how Biden-Harris administration has created 300,000 new clean energy jobs. Many in rural areas too. This is helping shift the narrative. Look, people are still dealing with sort of their, seeing prices increase. First of all, they do. That's why it's 2%. The target for the Fed is, 2% inflation rate year over year. It's now at 2.9. They still got to get it down to 2. But even when they get it down there, prices go up 2% every year. So people have felt that and are still, struggling with it. But on the other hand, when you look at the American people, polls asking them, how do you look at your economic condition and your economic future? And 75% say great. And then you say, well, what do you think about the country's economic future? And they all say it sucks. So it's, I think people are starting to get all this inflation coverage, and GDP and job creation is starting to break through. People look at their own condition, and they're not looking, they're not down about it. They still feel, because I think the news media did a great job of recession, and not a great job of there isn't one, but people will get that. But particularly, and we've talked about the lag, I think the lag is clearly shifting again. And also, I think for the first time, Kamala is actually trusted by more people on the economy than Trump, if I remember seeing that in a recent poll.
That's a new, I think it was 43-42, which okay, it could be 42 for whatever, but we're far, far removed from plus 15, right, plus 20 point Trump advantages on that. And
the other thing I've pointed it out several times. I'll point it out again. I'll repeat myself. I know people don't like it when I repeat myself, but hey, I am what I am. In 2022, inflation was 9%. It was, if you were going to get a revolt against Biden and the administration and the Democrats for being in control of the administration with interest rate, with literally inflation being at 9%, and where people were coming out of the pandemic in terms of jobs and things like that. If that was going to happen, if there was going to be a penalty, which there normally is, that big red wave would have come. And we all the way through it kept saying, it ain't coming, folks. That's not what people are focused on. As much as the press kept saying recession, 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 and everybody says the economy is their most important issue, it didn't happen, didn't materialize. If it didn't materialize with 9% inflation, it's not going to be there with 2.9. And by the time we get to November, it's going to be, they're going to be, interest rates will have been cut further, and inflation will have gone down. Now, what's really amazing is when we had like one bad jobs miss about a month ago, I think it was, the press immediately went into recession fears are renewed. I mean, they just cannot stop. But I think the American people have figured it out and are feeling a lot better about their economic condition. A lot of work still to be done. Kamala Harris has plans to lower costs and do what's necessary. Trump's big plan will be more tax breaks for the billionaires at the expense of Social Security, Medicare, and working families.
I do have to mention how funny his live stream was this week with Elon. Funny's not the right word. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I laughed pretty hard. I mean, I couldn't listen to it. I tried like 4 times to get on. I got on for 10 minutes, got kicked off. They had some huge issues. And I don't know, man, it really feels like he is reaching. Every time Trump tries to do something, it just feels like nothing is working for him right now.
Well, he's got nothing. I mean, that's the look, it was easy to, in a world where you're 78 and Joe Biden's 81 and you're dominating the popular conversation, whether the press or even the online conversation, Donald Trump could dominate that. And he had ever since he came down the escalator and could do it pretty easily against Joe Biden. The problem is that the day Joe Biden passed the torch to Kamala Harris, Trump doesn't know how to compete in that space with her. And she has dominated the popular conversation in this country, both the media and online, ever since. And he can't figure out how to get it back. And look, there's one thing when your notion of competing in the popular culture and the popular conversation against Biden is stopping by a UFC fighting event, hang out with tech bros, talking about cryptocurrency, and talking to Elon Musk on X. But that's not where that's a very, it is a great place. Those are several places to attract young white guys, but it's not where the popular cultural conversation in America is. And what's different about Kamala is in her 50s, you're at a place where she gets what brat is. She gets, even though
I was hoping you'd say brat.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's a connection. She connects with the older generation, the generations that are older than her, but she connects. It's a lot easier for her to connect with everybody younger than Trump ever can. And I think that really has shifted. And so, you were going to, I know we were talking about, the economic outlook, and that, for the first time, polls are showing that more Americans trust Kamala Harris on the economy than Trump. But it's because she gets where people really are. And where people really are, 4 in 5 Americans view corporate greed as a driver of inflation. That's up 15 points since 2022. Remember, we were going to go down in 2022 because inflation was all Biden's fault when it was at 9. Well, no, people understood it's right. Corporate greed that's doing it. Biden and Kamala were working to lower the cost of that. But beyond that, I'm just saying culturally, I think she's connecting with the younger, with people under 45. It was competing against Biden to connect for Trump to connect better than Biden with people under 45. That's an easier competition. He cannot compete with her at all. He has no clue what younger people are, what drives them. And the only thing that he knows is racism, attacking women, et cetera. And so when he does that to her, he's actually helping her connect with younger generations that are out there. And at the same time, there's plenty of people, there's plenty of women and others 50 and above, 60 and above, who go like, no, that's not me either. So I think he's got a real problem here.
Do you think Trump coming back on Twitter changes anything? Does it really matter that much at this point?
No. I mean, first of all, look, we'll get into this on a future show, but we got to build an alternative to Twitter because, basically we built a castle to one guy, Elon Musk, who makes all the rules, decides to platform someone like Trump and deplatform, people who've been who pro-democracy people because, they call him out. But no, that was, it's again, he's talking to his crowd. He's talking to, I think, even fewer people. I mean, I don't think he got 17 million. He used to have 17 million people on Twitter. I think they, I know they're cranking the numbers up to say they've got 1 billion people saw that thing. Well, yeah, I don't know. I have 780,000 followers or something like that on Twitter. I can see my impressions. My impressions are huge, but the engagement, the actual people engaging, is like 1/10 of that. Mm-hmm. And so, I just don't think, whatever they're quoting is complete bullshit.
Oh, you want a good one? I got a good one for you. And this is just very Trump. So clearly after he was slurring his words a lot, he sounded really off. Yeah. He put this out a couple days later. My conversation with Elon was heard by a record audience and was really something special, as Elon himself is very special, and I thank him for such a strong endorsement. Getting to your point, but wait for this one. Unfortunately, because of the complexity of modern day equipment and cell phone technology, my voice was, in certain areas, somewhat different and strange. Therefore, we have put out an actual and perfect recording of the conversation. He loves those perfect recordings, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a perfect phone call, the perfect conversation. It is, look, every day, it's like you want him to do one of those a day. I mean, let him and Elon talk. Let Donald Trump with his gold toilet and Elon Musk, billionaire wants tax cuts and to run the world, talk, because it would be incredibly, I think it would be, become more clear how off the rails Trump has actually gone. So, and I think that was part of what happened. I don't think it helped at all. And I even think that probably a lot of the people who were listening to it were who were fans were scratching their heads going why am I listening to this for 2 hours? And why did I wait 40 minutes for it? It's all crazy stuff. The live,
So that's a good reminder. We're just about out of time, but I do have to ask, next week, DNC, by the time a lot of our listeners hear us next, most of the DNC will probably be over. We'll probably figure out some way to record together live next week. Looking forward to having you here. What should our listeners be looking for out of the DNC next week? Is it harnessing the momentum?
Oh, yeah. No, they're going to harness the momentum. I think that's clear. I saw today that they're actually on Tuesday, the second day of the convention, they're leaving the convention to do a rally in Wisconsin, a public rally in Wisconsin, which I think is pretty interesting. I don't recall seeing, I'm sure it's happened in the past, but I think that's an interesting development. Keep your eye on that. No, I think this is real opportunity for people who were, unlike the Republican convention, where I think I really don't believe that many independents or people who weren't already supporting Trump had much curiosity about watching it. And we'll see whether I'm right or not. But I think this convention is going to really attract a lot of people who are curious, who want, there's something new, something different's happening. I see all this excitement. who actually tune in, not necessarily because they're for her. There'll be plenty who do, who tune in because they do. But I think there's going to be a lot of people who will really be getting literally their first real glimpse, Kamala Harris, Waltz, and be tuning in out of curiosity. And I think they are going to meet that moment with this convention. And I think you could see, unlike Trump that had no convention bump whatsoever, I think that we could see this polling momentum and the number of volunteers, the amount of money coming in, those kinds of things will all bump up post this convention and during it, I think.
Well, that is a great place to wrap today, Trippi.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for listening to that Trippi Show. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers and is part of Resolute Square. Check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Alex and I are also working on a project called Says Us, SEZ.US. Go check it out. We're declaring, like your reaction to it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a future show. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. And Alex, let's try to leave a link to says.us in our show notes. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Resolute Square.